Well, hello Athens, and welcome to Kaleidoscope. My name is Jane Penwell, and I'm here alone today because Nan is sick, and she isn't with me. So send her your good wishes. Hopefully she'll be back next week. Ready to bring her little taped vignettes. I'm no good at taped vignettes, so you'll have to put up with me talking. Surprise, surprise, huh? Okay, well, the first thing that we're going to talk about today is my poetry group. I always thought I was going to be a writer, and it didn't happen. Well, I wrote training materials for many years, but I didn't think that was the kind of a writer I was going to be. So now in my old age, I'm trying to go back to that dream that I had as a young person, not probably in my 20s, to actually write something and finish it. I've written a million things, but I've never finished anything. So one day I was listening to the radio, and I heard this lady talking about a writing group. She called it a writing group that was going on here in Athens and was sponsored by the Ohio Arts Council, called Artful Aging. And I thought, gee, that sounds interesting. And then she introduced herself as Wendy McVicker and said that she was the leader of the group, and she gave a phone number if you were interested. So I called that phone number and got Wendy McVicker herself, and she said, well, we have two parts to the group. One meets on Wednesdays at the Laurels, and the other meets on Fridays at AceNet. I said, well, I can't do it on Wednesday because I work. So I joined. She said, well, come Friday and join the Friday group. So I did. And I didn't know what to expect, obviously. So I toddled over to AceNet and walked in and discovered this wonderful group of women. They're all women, no men in our group at all, which is sad. I wish we'd have had a couple of men, but maybe next time. Anyhow, it was a wonderful group of women with wonderful things to say. Just a wonderful experience all the way around. And Wendy was a great motivator for us to get us to do things and write things maybe we wouldn't have otherwise. So the culmination of this group was last Wednesday night. We had a gala, shall we say, at the Laurels. Everybody got together who had participated and read their poems that they had written, or read whatever they had written, poem or otherwise. And we here at Kaleidoscope were planning to tape it and show it to you as a really interesting kind of a glimpse into what happens in Athens. You know, there's stuff like this going on. Well, unfortunately, as life has wont to do, our taping did not succeed. We have tape, but we don't have any sound because the person who was taping forgot to turn on the microphone, and it's all about reading the poems. Hello? So I'm sad to say that you're not going to get to hear that. Some of them were wonderful, wonderful, and I'm really sad that we won't hear them. But Nan has put together a little collage of the faces of people as they were reading their poems. And we're going to show you that, and then after that, I'm going to read the names of everybody that was in the group. I'm not going to read their poems, but then after that, I'll read my own. So we'll sort of have our own little poetry group in a few minutes. So take a look at Nan's collage. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. And now I am going to read from our little anthology that we got last Wednesday night, the names of the people who actually did read the poem, a poem, and were involved in the group in no particular order. And that will be shown by the first name, definitely not in alphabetical order, because the first name is Jane Woodrow. And then we have Nancy H. We have Margaret H. Bonnie C. Chris Cooper. Laura Luther. Elizabeth Larson. Patricia Lackman. Cheyenne Weaver. Molly Schoenhoff. Marianne Flournoy, Robin Schaefer, somebody you know, Jane Penwell, Sarah Guilford, Alicia Cowles, Alexandria Brandt, and Nancy Hawk. I hope I got everyone. I think I did. Let me just read a little quote here that was included in the book that I think is really good. It says, "There is a fountain of youth. It is in your mind, your talents, the creativity you bring to your life and the lives of people you love. When you learn to tap this source, you will truly have defeated age." And that was a quote from, of all people, Sophia Loren. And I think we could probably say that she has pretty much defeated age. I mean, if you look at her, it's pretty amazing. Okay, so those were the people who read last Wednesday night their work, whether it be a poem or whatever it might be. Sadly, we can't hear them, but at least I can say thank you to them we had a wonderful evening. And I had some wonderful inspiration from some of them. And I'm going to read you the poem that I read called My Grandmother's Porch. And you're going to get a look at my grandmother here. We have a picture of, that's my grandmother, Callie Blackburn, and my grandfather, Mel Blackburn, on the occasion of their 50th wedding anniversary. And my grandmother was very annoyed at her family for creating this 50th wedding anniversary because she never wanted anyone to know how old she was. And you'll see that's in the poem as well. She lived in a big old house, old Victorian, kind of house in Martins Ferry, Ohio. And it had a huge front porch, as those houses all did. And I, of course, as a child, loved that porch. So here we go. My grandmother's porch. My grandmother, Callie Blackburn, lived in an old house with a big porch in an old Ohio River town called Martins Ferry. There was a ferry that took people across the river to Wheeling, West Virginia before the bridges were built. The town's claim to fame was Betty Zane, who saved it when Indians attacked. It was a small town where people spent hot summer nights on their porches, rocking slowly back and forth, mesmerized by the murmur of voices, the creaks of old steps, and the clink of ice cubes in lemonade glasses. For years and years, that porch sheltered our family. When my grandfather died, we stood on it and talked and told stories about Mel and declared that we were all still good Democrats, just as he would have wanted us to be. The awning was striped green and orange. It had scallops that hung down to keep out the sun and to welcome me when I came up the street in the summer dark, hopping from shadow to shadow on the old uneven sidewalk under the buckeye trees. When I was married, the whole family met on that porch and admired my grandmother's spunk. To have stood on a stepladder and cleaned the birds' nests out of the corners at 80-something years old, she would never tell her true age or show her driver's license to anyone. Once, when we went to Niagara Falls, we took a bus tour that went to Canada. Callie, however, stayed in the custom building, waiting for us and the bus to return because she refused to say how old she was, just repeated again and again, over 21. The porch furniture never changed or seemed to age. It was always a glider that glided and rocking chairs that rocked easily on the jute rug, welcoming friends who came to sit and talk, well, maybe to gossip with Callie, while Mel smoked his cigar and smiled. He never said a word about anyone, even though he, an IRS agent, knew everything about everyone, especially the arcane finances of the few shady people who lived down over the hill, never to be seen by me except once. When I sold Girl Scout cookies, my grandfather decided I should win the prize for most cookies sold and planned our attack sitting on the porch. "We'll go to Foxy's," he said. I gasped. "Foxy's pool hall? What will my mother say?" "Nothing," he said, "because she won't know anything about it." So we attacked the porch steps with a purpose, marching down the sidewalk, ready to do battle with anyone who said no. When we got to Foxy's, Mel said, "I'll go in first and talk to Foxy. You wait out here till I call." I saw through the window Foxy and Mel talking earnestly. Finally, Foxy nodded his head yes, and Mel called Joe, his name, for me. I came in dressed in my green Girl Scout uniform with tam and sash, just as our leader had told us to do when we went out to sell our cookies. Foxy, for some reason, was not able to talk, but he bobbed his head yes and agreed to buy 50 boxes of cookies, of assorted Girl Scout cookies on that day, my first day in a pool hall in Martins Ferry, Ohio. So that was my contribution to the evening, and I really enjoyed the whole thing, you know, writing, thinking about my childhood, all kinds of things like that. Trying to get things down on paper. I've discovered from participating in this group that whereas I would have liked to have been Emily Dickinson, if you know her, she was a fantastic American poet that I've always, always, always admired. But I'm not. So instead of Emily Dickinson, I've turned out to be Ogden Nash. If you know Ogden Nash, he was kind of a funny guy and made lots of comments, social comments. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with Ogden Nash. It's just that's not what I thought I was going to be in terms of a writer. So, our group project, Artful Aging, is over, but we're in hopes that maybe something will start back up again this fall. We don't know. So stay tuned, because I'll make any announcement that if I find out we're going to start again, so that if you're interested in joining something like this, you'll have the opportunity. Okay. Now, this is actually, now that I think about it, this is family day for me. My grandmother and grandfather, you saw their pictures and learned a little bit about them. Now, we're going to see my cousin. Her name is Polly Arntz. She grew up in Cambridge, Ohio, graduated from Cambridge High School, went to Miami University, and then Ohio State. And then after she graduated with her master's degree from Ohio State, she got a job in Houston and moved to Texas. And she's lived in Texas and now New Mexico for, gosh, I don't even know, must be going on 30 years now, 25 anyway. So, you know, it's funny, it's just a girl from Cambridge, Ohio. You don't think living in the Southwest. And when I go to visit, I find it even more amazing because it's so different. The green, you know, it just isn't there. It would never be the place for me, but her heart is in the Southwest. So she, when she moved to Houston, she worked for a company. She made some money, and then the company got sold, and they bought her stock. So she had decided that she was going to make a big move in her life and went to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and purchased a home and decided to get into the community and just change her life. She wanted to make a big change. So that occurred. She made a big change in her life, and today you're going to see a video of her giving a TED Talk. And those of you that don't know what TED Talks are, TED Talks are, I think, inspirational would be the best word to use. To get to do a TED Talk, you have to apply. They have to investigate you and your story and everything. And then if they decide that you have a message and you have an inspirational message and it's something new, you have actually done something that is worthy of being given the time, then you get 10 minutes to give your TED Talk. That is in this particular branch of the TED Talks that she did. There are famous people like Bill Gates that give TED Talks, but they get an hour, of course. But in her branch of TED right now, she only got 10 minutes. So, of course, you know, they videoed it, and it's available on their website. And so, with the permission of Ted Albuquerque, we are going to show my cousin, Polly Arntz, giving her TED Talk and talking about the inspiration that she got when she decided to change her life completely, leave Houston, go to Santa Fe, and start doing things entirely differently. So I hope you enjoy this.
12 years ago, after retiring from a corporate career, our next presenter embarked on a personal journey that allowed her to reinvent her life by finding new purpose and meaning. Through her volunteer service on the board of directors of the International Folk Art Market in Santa Fe and her work as a documentary filmmaker, she discovered a vast reservoir of hope for reversing the cycle of poverty through the simplicity of handmade art. Her story will inspire you to see that the world needs solidarity, not charity, to change the lives of millions. Join me in giving Polly Arntz a warm welcome on up to the stage.
Have you ever had a moment in your life when everything just clicked and a whole new world opened up to you in ways that you couldn't have imagined before? For me, this awakening began with the simple act of appreciating something handmade. Chantha Nguyen is the strongest person I know. As a child in Cambodia, she lived an idyllic life. At just 9 years old, her world ended when the Khmer Rouge took power. Orphaned, exiled, and penniless, she survived 2 decades as a refugee. Chantha suffered what no human being should ever have to endure. Returning to her home in Stun Trang at the end of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, she found it cut off and virtually destroyed. She told me, We called ourselves frogs in the well. With no way out, we knew we had to help ourselves. But how? Well, Chantha challenged herself. How can we use the art to make a living? And silk work has been indigenous to the Khmer culture for centuries. So Chantha draws on that century-old tradition. She taught the women of her village how to weave. And today, her silk weaving enterprise produces an upscale line of these beautiful scarves and accessories called Mekong Blue, providing 500 families with access to vocational training centers, health care, and food. And these weavers support their families better than most, ultimately benefiting 5,000 people. And Chantha heals herself by teaching the Cambodian women about their cultural inheritance, inspires them to self-reliance, and helps to repair her country. Chantha is always moving forward, always. That's where hope lives.
Because now she's a breadwinner instead of a dependent. Therefore, she earned respect from her husband. No more domestic violence. She sent her children to school. When a woman becomes financially independent, she is a free woman.
Rangina Hamidi, first childhood memory is of her mother crying as the family prepared for a harrowing escape out of their native Afghanistan and into neighboring Pakistan. And the family settled in Pakistan only to flee again under threat to the girls to be defaced with acid for attending school. This time, they landed in the United States, and Rangina earned her college degree along with U.S. citizenship, just as the events of 9/11 unfolded. In the aftermath, she was compelled to return with no other desire but to help the women. And Rangina knew the best way to help her countrywomen was to create opportunity. And just like Chantha, she looked for a solution that made sense in her community. And the ancient skill of intricate hammock embroidery is passed on from women to women. It can be done inside the home, crossing no boundaries in that strictly patriarchal society. And it was their resistance to oppression. Rangina created Kandahar Treasure, the first woman-owned business in the history of Kandahar. And she employs 450 women, and the business ultimately benefits about 4,000 people. Fierce, unstoppable, and unapologetic. This woman will not rest until meaningful change comes to Afghanistan.
The Taliban stronghold was Kandahar. Women cannot make a simple decision without the approval of their men. But the women of Kandahar are producing beautiful ancient art in the middle of killing and destruction.
Every time I wear this tunic, I'm reminded of Rangina's courage, her compassion, and her ingenuity to figure out how to pull this off in that society. It just blows my mind. 12 years ago, I was a high-powered investments professional. I had no knowledge of handmade art or the artisans that made these beautiful pieces. What I did know was my own struggle. I was at a crossroads. My personal toolkit just wasn't working for me anymore. So I made a choice and left it all behind, moving to New Mexico and looking for ways to connect and give back. I found myself volunteering for the International Folk Art Market Santa Fe. I had no idea I had stumbled onto a path of transformation. I started feeding my soul instead of my stomach. And by following that path physically, I became half my original size. Emotionally, I expanded, resonating with the life-changing stories of so many grateful artists, recognizing the power of supporting these women who are gritty and resilient to their core. I was all in. I began inviting the artists into my home and going to visit them in their countries. Now I use the power of film to share their stories. In the quiet stillness of the midday heat of Maun, Botswana, I sought out an expert African basket weaver. And when I told her about the Santa Fe market, she took hold of both my hands, saying, "Thank God, thank God. I've been trying to get in and I need help." Takatu Kashonya had heard about our New Mexico market half a world away and recognized it as a gateway to a better life. And with a little help, her organization applied to and was accepted to the International Folk Art Market Santa Fe, earning in one weekend what would normally require 5 to 10 years. And this market is just one example of what access can do. Artists, activists, entrepreneurs, women like Chanta, Rangina, and Takatu are everywhere across the globe, in every country, every region, and every community. These are kick-ass women. They're working against all odds, down on the ground, using what's right in front of them to better their lives. Look at these women. Look at what they're doing. They're building businesses, supporting their families, and reinvesting back into their community for important things like education, their environment, and healthcare services for their families. Their status changes, and they gain respect. Now, in my journey of discovery, I've learned that these artisans and their small cottage enterprises are the second leading employer in the developing world. These women reinvest 90% of their earnings back into their communities and families. Women artists from around the globe are an untapped resource that can be harnessed for social and economic development. Investing in women produces a huge return on investment. It's an effective way to reverse the cycle of poverty. What they need is access to markets. Buying their authentic arts and crafts changes lives. It enriches their lives. It enriches our lives, bridging from adversity to prosperity. You know, who knew that something as simple and useful as a handmade basket could become a symbol for economic freedom, social equity, and cultural preservation? Join me in discovering the humanity of the handmade.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I think it's absolutely marvelous that someone got the idea of creating a venue where people who actually make things can come and actually sell them, because usually it's an intermediary, and they get paid like a little tiny sum, and the middleman A and middleman B and middleman C, and then finally when it's sold, it's so much more money than what the artist actually got. So I think that's just marvelous. And to think of people transforming themselves and their world, their village or whatever, based on handicrafts is pretty amazing. And I know it works because that Santa Fe folk market is huge every summer. It's every summer. There's two big markets in Santa Fe. The International Folk Market and then the Indian Market. And the Indian Market's probably coming up pretty soon, maybe in August, I'm not sure. But both of them feature Native people with their handmade articles for sale. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Okay, Athens, well, I hope you've enjoyed this. We've put together some maybe odd little groups of things. I'm trying to think of a theme. I guess maybe you could say people doing something. Like me going to my group and writing, you know, first time I've done it in ages, and Polly, you know, working on the international folk market and so on. So I hope you've enjoyed this. We've enjoyed spending the time with you. Thank you for watching. And hopefully, along with Nan, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. No wonder that mob.
For our two closing selections, the first is an adaptation of the Wexford Carol, a traditional carol, and I'm going to finish with Randall Bassett's Memoria. We'd like to welcome to the stage our two soloists for the Wexford Carol, Dr. Philip Christensen and Dr. Deborah Rentz from our School of Music. Welcome.
this way. Catch up with head and ears and follow him down the hallway like a little puppy. He takes me to a lampman's shop where all the cap lights on a dish are in charge of that shift. He walks over to one above the number 386, takes the light off the charge and hands it to me. Walks back over to the lampman. Give me your belt, boy. I take my miner's belt off, hand it to head and ears. He hands the lampman. Name's G. Ray, number's 386. With that, head and ears walks a few feet over to these two big boards, painted white, with hooks on them and brass discs hanging on some of those hooks. Boy, this here is the inboard and this is the outboard. You come in every morning, take your check off the outboard, you put it on the inboard. When you come out at the end of the shift, you take your check off the inboard, put it on the outboard. Now, if you go underground and your check's not on the inboard, we're going to have to bring you all the way back outside and change that check. You go home, you don't take it off the inboard, we're going to call you at home, you're going to have to drive all the way back here and change that check. You got that, boy?
Now what is this? What kind of snake?
It's a black rat snake.
Uh-huh.
He's native to Ohio.
He's a big one, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a real big nest raider.
Ah, so he likes eggs.
Yeah.
He's beautiful. Quite beautiful. I mean, if you don't mind snakes.
Oh, yeah.
Now, see, if you were holding a tarantula, I'd be out of here.
Yeah, I wouldn't be holding a tarantula.
But snakes.
I'm not scared of spiders, but I dang sure don't want to be holding one.
Well, I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm scared of them. But you know, this is the courtyard of the museum, the Ephesus Museum. And there are some lovely marble. This is a tomb. They didn't bury them, they were above ground. And our guide says these holes in the side, right here, were made by tomb robbers who, as soon as they could, got inside there and took everything that was left. There they made a hole. Looks like somebody actually got in there.
I guess this is where we're supposed to go.
These showcases take this place in our collection. You can see jewelry. What I keep in mind is something that we need to come see. With the name 3 hours, got 3 hours. God of 13, make you know that today in medicine they use his name to explain disease, the constant original problem for man.
Reproduction of a Roman home from Ephesus. You can see the mosaics on the floor. This is the real deal, I think. And then a pseudo-Roman lady lighting a lamp, and the gentleman drinking and eating. behind them is the atrium of their house. This is the statue of Artemis, actually found at Ephesus. She wanted, according to the legend, to feed the world. So that's why she looks this way. Pretty amazing. It says, from the 1st century AD. And here's some of the items. Found at Ephesus. Horse. Quite lovely. Parts of columns. This looks like a giant dumbbell. It's a lead pipe with a stone sleeve from the altar. Another statue of Artemis. No head. And another statue of Artemis. From around the 1st century AD as well. And this is a reproduction of the actual temple of Artemis. Thank you. He's got 127 pillars in this temple. It's amazing. And one of all of those, one is left. And there's a stork's nest on top of it. How the mighty are fallen.